What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I'm going to tell the story of Life is Strange True Color, summarize it in as little time as humanly possible, and we're just going to jump right in. Life is Strange True Color stars Alex Chen, who leaves foster care after 8 years being apart from her brother and goes to meet him, Gabe, at Haven Springs, a small little town in Colorado. The first part of the game is simply to walk around and meet people. You meet Ethan, who is a son-like figure to Gabe. You meet Eleanor, who is a owner of a flower shop in the area, and you pretty much just go around and you talk and you experience life in what will be your new home. The first main conflict of the game revolves Mac, who is a character that's dating Riley, and he believes that Gabe is dating Riley kind of behind his back. So he goes to get Gabe, and basically he beats the living heck out of him. But this strong emotional hate and anger actually triggers Alex, where we find out, yes, she can read people, she can read their emotions, but if they're strong enough, they're super strong, she can actually almost absorb them into her and make those emotions her own, to which then she attacks Mac. Now, later on in the night, it's found out that Ethan goes to examine or goes to explore the old mines, and there's really no way around that. I mean, you can rat him out to Gabe, but no matter what, that's going to happen. You go, you do end up saving him and rescuing him, but this results in a mining explosion, which was scheduled to happen, although Gabe did call and said that it was called off, that they'd be perfectly safe. The mining explosion happens anyway. A rock hits Gabe. He falls. Ryan has to cut the rope connecting both Alex and Gabe, and Gabe falls to his death, and that's the end of Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is a lot of kind of figuring out what life is like after Gabe. Mourning, loss, sadness, figuring out what's going on with Ethan, or kind of what, how he's dealing with it. But this is where you meet most of the town. You continue to see Jed on and off. In this episode, you actually really figure out that Eleanor has some, problems in terms of dementia. She can't remember things. She's trying to hide it the best she can, but she cannot. You play Steph in a game of foosball, actually multiple games of foosball, and it's just a lot of connecting. Again, all those characters that you meet with Ryan at the very end, but the plot underneath it is figuring out what actually happened. Gabe made the call, and somebody picked it up, or at least we think so, and nothing ended up happening. There was no resolution there. Well, Mac was actually the worker at the time. He received the phone call, but he's being very quiet about it. He's being very weird about it. In fact, he even asked Riley to leave with him to kind of get away from the town. So you have to try to figure out what's going on, and you do this by basically confronting Mac, getting, again, to know what's going on emotionally with him, where you find out that, yes, he did receive the call, and actually, he's not that bad of a guy. He did actually put the orders through to his superiors, and they're the ones who ignored it. He did tell them, look, there's a boy here, you can't do the blast, or we need to delay the blast, and they ended up doing it anyway. And that's kind of where it leaves you at the end of episode 2, along with, sending the paper lantern into the sky, mourning the loss of Gabe. But that's where you see everybody being kind of acceptance, but also kind of grieving and mourning for Gabe, except for Diane, who's a worker for Typhon, which is the mining company that has a lot of stake in the city of Haven, and also just they're a really big corporation in general. Episode 3 starts, and episode 3 is half detective case, half LARPing session, which is actually incredibly cool. Main goal of episode 3 is to figure out what happened with Diane, right? She got the call. She was the one in charge. Obviously, there's people above her, but she was the one who actually put the order through to go ahead and do the explosion anyway. So part of it is trying to get evidence that something more is happening than what's currently being investigated, which is nothing. Really, there's no leads. Typhon is kind of shutting things down left and right, and you need to get the USB stick from Diane, which you can do by getting Steph or Ryan to kind of try to hit on her and try to distract her while you do it. The rest of episode 3, for the most part, is a LARPing session in which you're literally just trying to cheer Ethan up. He's been through a very tough time. He really, and even including through the LARPing session at the end, he completely blames himself for the loss of, again, his father figure, because, again, he was the one who went into the mine. If that didn't happen, his dad would still be alive. So you put together, actually Steph being kind of the mastermind behind it, you put together a LARPing session where you have to complete quests, and it is the entire town kind of all pitching in. You go into different stores, and they're all kind of organized. Or specifically, I guess, the record store is organized like a shop. Steph is dressed like a witch. You could fight bosses in a Final Fantasy Fantasy cross. I guess the final boss is more like a Kingdom Hearts thing. Very, very different, but it also kind of cringe in a way, but also just incredibly enjoyable and just fun and very, very different. So you go through the quest, you try to get, or you ultimately end up getting the 3 jewels. You fight the final boss, which could be foreshadowing, by the way, in that it is Jed, which is actually the king turned, actually he's the bad guy of this LARPing session. You fight him, and everything's going well, but then you kind of realize Ethan almost has PTSD over the issues that obviously happen, and he still, 100% blames the loss of Gabe on himself. Charlotte is also incredibly, incredibly angry, specifically at this point where she really hates her son. She loves him to death, but she also hates him because she also, in her own way, blames him for the loss of Gabe. You can choose to take that anger from her, or you can choose to leave the anger with her, and those will play out in different ways as the game goes on. Another big thing that happens in episode 3 is you go through the audio, you go through the phone call, you go through the records to figure out that actually there's more to this Typhon thing than meets the eye. In fact, there was a second mining explosion that was happening at the exact same time as the first one. So what was going on? Why would you do a second explosion? You were doing it before inspection started. What exactly is going on there? But the USB stick holds all the evidence. So all we need to do is give it to the police, give it to the right authorities, and problems will be solved. Then we jump to episode 4, which pretty much has a sense of everything's going to be okay. We have everything we need. We know things are going to be sorted out. Let's enjoy life. And that brings us to the festival, in which you can do lots of different things in the festival. But the main thing is you can give a rose. You don't have to. You don't have to pick Ryan or Steph. You can be, by yourself, basically. They'll still be your friends, but you won't have a romantic interest. But you can give the rose to one of them, which will solidify that romantic relationship with the person. You can actually go off the beaten path and connect with Riley and tell her or not tell her that her mother figure in Eleanor has dementia. That will affect whether she stays or leaves Haven Spring, and that also affects how Eleanor will treat you in episode 5. If you do not see Riley at all, literally doesn't matter. Just pretend like you told her nothing, that nothing actually ended up happening. You meet your love interest to kind of solidify that relationship afterwards, after you do a nice little musical, note with Steph. You play a song with her, which is a really cool scene. And then you see Pike again, who is the police officer, kind of the one that hangs out around the city, in which he wants to take you in for questioning. It's there revealed kind of the restless stuff that's going on. Yes, the USB stick is evidence, but you stole it, so it can't really be used legally to prove anything. Also, Typhon is very, very powerful, and they're watching over everything. They know who you are, they know who Ryan is, they know who Steph is, and they're gonna, do some very bad things to you. They actually have done some very bad things in the past. They can do some very bad things if you do not let this thing go. If you don't drop the idea that there's more to it, that Typhon is to blame, that there was a second mining explosion, all of that stuff. That ultimately leads to a decision where you can take the fear, because Pike has a ton of fear about, his own life, regarding Typhon. You can take that fear for yourself, or again, you can kind of leave him with the fear and just sign the affidavit. You then have a discussion with Jed, who you ultimately admit everything that's kind of gone on, right? That there is a cover-up. There's something that was in that second mine that they want to keep hidden. So they did an explosion there, but they also did the normal explosion. That's why they couldn't delay the first explosion any longer. Inspections were coming. They were trying to hide what they did 11, 12 years ago, so they had to do these blasts simultaneously, which again resulted in Gabe dying, but also is hiding whatever's going on in that first mine from over a decade ago. You tell Jed this, he's fine with it. He'll say, what, I'll show you actually what's in there. We'll go through it. You go there, but he actually betrays you. He was and you find this out a lot earlier, actually in the beginning of the game. He's heralded as almost the savior, where he brings these miners in, but I believe they say the miners, to their knowledge, nobody actually died. Nobody actually knows that they died. He kind of brought them out, and he's just regarded as a savior miner in the community. And then Typhon actually bought him the bar. That's a center point of the game, and he's just, this great community leader, this father figure to everybody. And that's the facade. That's the fake story that's going on, when in reality, he brought these people in, and he actually left several of them to die. He's actually the cause of it. And instead of owning up to his mistake, he basically goes along with Typhon and just buries everything, there. And so that's what the second mining explosion was to hide, was the fact that there was actually a massive amount of human life lost many years ago that was hidden, and then they needed to literally hide it before inspection starts. So he shoots you. He doesn't, kill you, but he injures you, and you fall down the mining shaft, ending episode 4. Episode 5 is very trippy, very different. I actually really, really love it, and it's basically going through almost your inner demons. It's a very personal kind of episode where you're almost stuck in like a limbo in your mind, and Alex relives a lot of her almost traumatic, in fact, actually all of them are traumatic experiences in her life, but also where she really discovers that she has powers, where these things really take effect, but also just really big personal things happen. The first being the loss of her mom, and really the first time that she felt immense emotion, basically for the first time in that way. Second one was her father leaving her, and third one was being turned away by pretty much any parent at any foster home she ever lived in. Nobody really wanted her, which was that anger part of it. So she goes through it basically just to understand and accept that these things have happened. This was her life, and to kind of move on from it in some sense. She wakes up, she goes through the mine, and she finds that one of the miners was actually her father. When her father left her and Gabe, he, did God knows what, but at some point he ended up in Haven Springs, the same place that they're at, and he worked as a miner under Jed, and he was one of the miners, obviously, that died because of the mess up there. So Alex figures all that stuff out. She makes it out of the mine, and, we get to the final part of the final episode of the game, in which the whole goal is basically to convince the town council that this is what's happened. Jed is lying, Typhon is lying, all of this stuff is happening, and depending on the decisions you make, people will back you up. People may not. Steph, I believe, under every circumstance, will back you up. Ryan will not. Depends on what you choose. And the townsfolk, will or will not. Depends on what you've done throughout the game. Again, some quick examples. Pike will defend you only if you took his fear away. Eleanor will defend you only if you didn't tell Riley about her dementia. Otherwise, again, if you do the opposite of these things, these characters do not defend you. But no matter what happens, no matter who defends you and who doesn't defend you, ultimately, you end up connecting very emotionally to Jed, in which you kind of break him down, saying, you know why he did all this stuff or what happened. You can choose to either forgive him or condemn him for, the stuff that he's done in the past. And no matter, again, even there, what you do, he ends up confessing to the police, and that's where pretty much the story ends. The final part of the story is a few, I believe, weeks later, maybe 1 week later, where your love interest, if you do have one, will knock on your door. You'll be able to say kind of one last thing with them. You'll make the first of two kind of decisions of what you want to do, whether you want to leave Haven Springs or stay, and then ultimately you head up to the roof and you talk to Gabe, which is still basically your subconscious kind of deciding and rationalizing, what am I going to do? Ultimately, there are 6 endings in all in this game. You can stay in Haven Springs without being romantically invested in anybody. You can stay with Steph and work in the DJ booth, work in the record shop. You can stay with Ryan and just kind of build a life, start anew. And then same thing if you leave. If you leave, you can leave by yourself, you can leave with Steph, or you can leave with Ryan on a new adventure. And that is where the game ends. So let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. All of my other social media, my Twitter, my second channel, and our Patreon and YouTube memberships are in the description below if you guys want to check it out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.